present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Blazier, Mr. Scheck, people represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, and Mr. Harmon, also Ms. Lewis. Jury is not present. Counsel, one issue I want to take up before we resume with the jury, and that is this the objection concerning the absence of a CDOT on some of the LAPD PCR results. I've received the letter brief filed by the prosecution. I didn't receive anything from the defense this morning. Mr. Harmon, I'll hear from you first. Good morning, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Perhaps we should start with Ms. Cotton's testimony. The distinction that is made, and I'm not a scientist, but this is consistent with Dr. Cotton's testimony, consistent with the user guide, is the control dot is important because things that are more intense than the control dot on the DQ alpha strips mean that that is a type or types that are present. If the C dot is absent, it doesn't mean that dots which are there are not present. It just means that one cannot say that there are not other mixtures there. And that's the distinction between a reportable result and reporting what you see. When those dots light up, the defense really can't have it both ways. They've made a big deal about dots lighting up, suggesting that things are there. Now we have dots lighting up, and they don't want the jury to hear that dots lit up because there's no C dot there. So I'm suggesting that there's a factual inconsistency with the position that the defense has taken. We've pointed out that there are already two such results.
Well, the problem there was that their objection was late in coming. What's the problem?
That was the initial problem, but in rereading it, it would appear that you considered the substance of the objection as well. I mean, we've had to patch boards at the last minute, Your Honor. So, but in the user guide makes the distinction between typable results. I mean, the key is there are, I can tell you what there are.
Well, Mr. Harmon, forgive me for interrupting you,
Sure.
but let me redirect you to where we need to go here.
Sure.
The issue is, what is the relevance of a result without a C-dot control?
The relevance are the relevance of these results, and I can, because I mean there are some differences in what the results are. The relevance are when those dots light up, that means there is some biological material that caused them to light up.
Well, more specifically,
Sure.
can't we assume that it's amplified DNA that is causing that?
We
to light
can,
up?
because that's where that's in the hybridization process. That's what you would have.
But doesn't the lack of the C-dot indicate that there's insufficient amplified product for a reliable result?
Well, what do you mean by reliable? And that, I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, that's what the guide says.
That's the key, and this is what I was just telling you, Your Honor. It means that biological material, there is biological material that produced those types that caused those dots to light up. It also means there could be other biological material present there that could help you interpret what's there. But what's there is there. And I think to be concrete, I think you need to appreciate what these results are, where the stains are from.
All right. What are they, and what are they?
Item 47.
A Bundy stain.
One of the Bundy stains, and you know what the results that other labs have produced from those. They're 1112. They're consistent with Mr. Simpson. Well, Mr. Yamauchi, his results were 1112 and no C dot. And those results mean that there is some biological material that Mr. Yamauchi typed that produced the 1112. It doesn't mean there's not something else there. It just means that at least there was enough biological material to light up those two dots And in the context of of this case, that's a very significant observation. There's no question that it could mean a number of other things. That has never been a limitation on presenting any form of physical evidence analysis, except maybe I should back off that. We've had some limitations put on our positive phenolphthalein testing, but for different reasons. That's the significance of that. That's a result that's been consistently produced throughout the testing in this case. I think it gets a little more interesting when we switch over to item 42, which we know was a sample that was taken from the pool of blood that Nicole Brown was found in, and presumably that's her. Mr. Yamauchi's results were a 1-1-1-1 with the C dot very faint. Now, what that suggests is that, and it suggests a lot of things, and a lot of things that are much more critical at this point in the case with all this cross-contamination and everything else that the defense has floated for weeks. What that suggests is, number one, he typed it right. What that suggests is, in the sequence of events that these things were handled in, that this systematic cross-contamination that the defense has continually suggested, that suggests is that this stain that was processed right after in the sequence, right after the Bundy stains and before the defendant's reference sample was not cross-contaminated. And we know all the substrate controls were not cross-contaminated. So the fact that there was no 1.2 suggests that that's a very important control. It was never meant to be a control against this phenomenon. So we have two different results with weak or no C dots that mean very important things, but they don't mean that these are the only types.
Are these the only two non-C dot results that you're going to offer, that you want to offer?
That's, yes. Let me make sure. Yes, Your Honor.
So you're saying it's relevant because it's consistent with the other results, it's an indicia of the lack of contamination, and it's not misleading because it can be explained to the jury so that they can give to it the weight to which it's entitled.
You know, if
Is
you
that your argument?
That's my argument, and that was always my intention of not saying it any more strongly than that. And if I do, Mr. Scheck will cross-examine on that point. That's what it means. That's all it means. And it means something very powerful in the context of this case at this point.
But shouldn't I be very concerned about the user's guide that says, don't use this? If
That's
there's
not
no
what it
C
says,
dot?
Your Honor. Yeah, I
Actually,
appreciate that.
Excuse me, Mr. Hart, why don't you do this? Why don't you give me that page out of the user's guide? I think we should have a photocopy of that in the record, so the record's clear as to what I considered in making this ruling.
Sure, and
Mrs. Robertson, would you photocopy this page for me, please?
I mean, I think you have to read it very clearly when it says an accurate determination of the type cannot be made since there is a possibility that other probe signals are also below the threshold of detection. That's the way this will be presented. That this is what I saw, but here are the other possibilities. And that's, in the context of this cross-contamination, there's no question that the caution that has to be made when that's presented.
All right, Mr. Scheck.
Mr. Harmon's argument is scientific nonsense, and it's going to confuse the jury, and it fails to abide by even the most fundamental, foundational requirements of reliability. The user's guide, Your Honor, is a kit that's put out by the company that manufactures this product and stands to make a profit off it, and should not necessarily be regarded as anything more than a minimum. But it's evident from even the user's guide that when the intensity of this, there's no C dot, that means that an accurate determination of type cannot be made, since there could very well be other signals present. And I mean, this is the fundamental control of the strip. Mr. Sims's testimony at 28709, question, just to digress for a second, if you saw Mr. Simpson's type in a stain and you were unable to see a C dot there, how would you report that? He answered, in our laboratory, we would not consider that a typable result. We would note the types, but we would not consider it to be a reportable result. I mean, when he says we would note it, I mean, in other words, he's not going to throw away the data and say that that never happened, but they wouldn't report it in court, and they don't regard it as a typable result. And I don't think that there's anything more fundamental to this system. And if this isn't a foundational objection to the reliability of the evidence that ought to be sustained, then I suppose we can give the jury anything as far as this system is concerned. And to try to start raising inferences about whether there is or isn't contamination, or there is or isn't reports, typable results there that are consistent with something else, when the fundamental control on the strip fails and you can't make an accurate determination of type, that's not the kind of stuff that should be put before this jury, which, Lord knows, is going to have enough trouble sorting through what they have in a proceeding where we didn't have an admissibility hearing. I mean, I think a lot of this is not adequately validated to go before a jury, but, you know, you said we couldn't litigate it. But this...
That's
this,
after you waived it. But go ahead.
No, you ruled. You ruled. I mean, you know, we have to live with this, and I think it's tough enough for these people. But this is ridiculous.
Mr. Harmon, any other comments?
Sure. Rather than guess about what Gary thinks, he's sitting right here. I asked him if I adequately articulated it, and he said I did. If you'd like to hear from him what he thinks about it, you know, I don't pretend to speak for the entire scientific community. I do the best I can, but Gary's sitting right here, and rather than make a mistake about what he feels on this, why don't we hear from him?
No, I'm not inclined to hold a hearing at this point, counsel. All right. The foundational objection as to the results with the lack of CDOT will be sustained. Neither party may inquire into that. All right, let's have the jurors.
How can I ask him if they were inconclusive?
Yes, you can. Ask him if it was typed, and what you can ask him specifically that there was a CDOT failure and it's not a typable result. All right, let's proceed. Ms. Clark. I got 1 point in authority. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold the jury here. Hold them. Forgot about this. I did get one set of points and authorities on the 356 issue.
And ours are coming momentarily on. So, the court said, I think you said last night that you wanted a 9, but we wouldn't argue it right at 9 o'clock. So, they'll be here momentarily on.
All right. I also got an anonymous phone message on my voicemail this morning suggesting that I suggest to you that you look up the Greek derivation of the word, one of the adjectives you used yesterday.
I did that last night. I looked in my dictionary. last night, Your Honor. It was, the term, as I understand it, applies to both male and females. And so that was my understanding, but we'll discuss that.
All right, well, just a word of caution.
It doesn't matter, Your Honor. It's a personal attack that I thought all counsel
Counsel,
before you referring to.
counsel, I'm cautioning him, so I don't think you need to add anything to it.
Do you want to, I wanted to indicate to the court that we gave a transcript to the court.
Yes.
It was incomplete and it's on its way.
Okay. All right,
Your Honor, just one other question. We're going to finish with Mr. Yamauchi first.
yes.
And Mr. Sims is here. Is he assured that he will go through and it'll be done tomorrow at noon? Otherwise, I don't know what Mr.
Let's see how far we get.
I don't know how much further we're going to get, but particularly if we're going to argue that other issue, I'm beginning to get resigned to
Which other issue?
the door opening issue.
Let's assume that you get a positive ruling. That won't be presented with these witnesses.
Oh, no, I have some questions in regard to that, in terms of this witness's knowledge and things that are in those reports. Absolutely.
Your Honor, Mr. Scheck is seriously misinformed as to what this witness knows it could be
No.
inquired about.
I don't
Well,
wanna
I
have
guess
this
we'll
comment.
find out. All right, let's have the jurors.
Mr. Scheck is not going to be inquiring until the court rules.
He can inquire as to the state of Mr. Yamauchi's knowledge as of June 14th. I mean, that's clearly been brought before the jury with the last several questions and answers. Other matter, who knows? Let the record reflect that all the jurors have now rejoined us. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Yamauchi, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, the record reflect Mr. Colin Yamauchi is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Harmon. Good morning, Mr. Yamauchi.
Good morning.
Sir, you were reminded that you were still under oath, and Mr. Harmon, you may conclude your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yamauchi, I want to go back over a couple of details that were in the processing you discussed yesterday, and you may want to refer to your notes. We talked about your sketching out and counting out the number of swatches yesterday. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember how many swatches were contained in each of the items?
Of the ones that I analyzed?
Yes.
Yes, I have clear notes that I sketched out.
Okay. Would you look at those notes? Because I'm going to ask you how many of each of those.
And which page in your notes is this when you find it, Mr. Yamauchi? Yes, I just asked him to tell us what page he's referring to. But I assume it's the same page we saw yesterday. All right, proceed, Mr. Ryan.
Okay, starting in the order that you process, these are the ones along the Bundy walkway. 52, how many swatches were in the coin envelope, or I'm sorry, the bindle for the stain envelope, or the stain?
2.
How many swatches were in the substrate control?
1.
In 49, the next one in along the walkway, how many stain swatches were in the bindle?
6.
How many swatches were in the substrate control?
1.
And item 50, how many swatches were in the stain?
4.
And how many swatches were in the substrate control bindle?
1.
Now, do these swatches vary in size?
Yes, they do.
And your sketches actually reflect the different sizes or the relative differences?
Very approximate.
Okay. 48, how many swatches were in the stain bindle?
2.
And how many swatches were in the substrate control bindle?
There was 1.
47, how many swatches were in the stain bindle?
8.
How many swatches were in the substrate control?
1.
And 41, how many swatches were in the stain bindle?
4.
How many swatches were in the substrate control bindle?
1.
42, how many swatches were in the stain bindle?
6.
How many swatches were in the substrate control bindle?
1.
Okay. I want to go back to the first DQ alpha run that you testified about, the results that you produced. And one of the stains and substrate controls that we did not discuss yesterday was 47 and the 47 substrate control. You recall that?
Yes.
Did you, as a result of the PCR DQ alpha testing in this case, did you produce typable results from that substrate control, or reportable results?
On item number 47?
Yes. Well, maybe I ought to start out with, did you get a C dot on that stain, or on that strip?
Let me refer to that
Sure.
particular note. No C dot.
Okay. And as a result of not having a C dot, are you able to report a result, typable result from that strip?
No, I don't report one out.
Okay. And what about the substrate control? Was that processed in the sequence that you described yesterday?
Yes.
And did that produce a typable result?
No.
And let's shift to another stain that was in that sequence, item 42. That was processed. That was one of the potential reference samples that was provided to you.
Yes.
Did that produce a typable result?
No, it did not.
Okay, is that because of the another thing with the C dot?
Yes, once again, the C dot was very weak.
Okay, and when you see whatever you saw in that, how do you report that? Is inconclusive?
Yes.
Okay, was the substrate control for 42 also processed in the sequence of events?
Yes, it was.
Okay, did you produce a typable result on that?
No.
Okay, what does it mean when you don't get a C dot?
Well, the C dot's something that the manufacturer had to design because, after all, they're the ones that are making these strips and balancing out the correct amounts of components in them so that we can interpret this and give results and make conclusions on them. So they've designed and balanced the C dot in there to help us have an indication of where the reliability is. Now, if we know there's a C dot and it's distinct, then we can reliably draw conclusions as to the results we get. And that's why they have this developed within their system to help us, the analysts, make these decisions.
Okay, I believe, excuse me, when we closed yesterday, you had described some of the records that you kept in this first DQ Alpha run, and one of the items that you had described was the DNA electrophoresis record, the product gel,
Yes.
and also a 3-page document that's called Serology Casework Summary Sheet.
Yes.
And just to go back or touch bases on where we left off yesterday, you had described the 3-page Serology Casework Summary Sheet as a summary sheet of information derived from other records.
Yes.
Okay. And did you make some sort of misnumbering error when you filled out the summary sheet?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe that error, please?
Well, we take our records by assigning number runs to each of the major steps in our analysis. And then in order so that later on, if we're asked questions or we need to access some information, we take these number runs and we put them all onto one reference sheet. And in that reference sheet, I didn't catch this before, but I made an error and I wrote down 60 instead of the actual 61 run, which is written on my sheets that I keep with my analysis.
Okay, in a moment I'll have these marked. May I have marked as, excuse me, Your Honor, People's 282 for identification, a 3-page document that's entitled Serology Casework Summary Sheet, and the next line says DNA analysis.
All right, so mark 282.
People's Exhibit 283, a sheet entitled DNA Electrophoresis Record Product Gel. It's page L175. May I write those numbers on the face of those, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you.
Entirety's objection.
I'm sorry?
I have an entirety's objection.
356 objection?
Yes.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Overruled. I mean, you're the adverse party.
Mr. Yamauchi, I just want to show you what's been marked as 282 for identification. Is this the summary sheet that you made that numbering error on?
Yes.
And showing you 283 for identification, is this the sheet that had the actual numbers that you wrote when you did the work in this case?
The product gel?
The amplification number, yeah. Does that have the correct numbers
Oh,
on
yes,
it?
down this amp tube row, that would be the correct number. But there is another sheet for the amplification itself that has that number on it.
Does 283 have the correct number as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay, can we put 283 on the Elmo?
Yes.
Mr. Yamauchi, could you refer to the column that has the correct number on it, on 283?
Where it says amp tube, down that row, that would show the series, the amplification series 61.
And when you say amplification series, can you tell us what those numbers mean and why they're in that sequence?
Sure, certainly. In order to organize our work, the extraction process gets a particular number. In this case, the extraction would have been the extraction number 84, and that follows the list of all those numbers down. And then in the amplification, the part that I talked about where we're putting the thing in the tubes in the actual machine, the thermocycler, that gets another number assigned to it for each amplification that's done. In this particular case, amplification number 61 was the one that was assigned.
Okay, and under the column item number where it's got 84-1, 84-2, are those the correct numbers?
For the extraction, yes.
Okay. And can we put just the first sheet of Exhibit 282 up there, Your Honor? This is the serology casework summary sheet.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Yamauchi, can you direct us to the column where you made the numbering mistake?
Okay, that would be under, I'm going to look at my own copy.
Sure.
Where it says AMP number, that series, that 60 dash, should all indicate 61.
Okay, so you made a numerical mistake.
Yes.
When did you actually fill out the serology casework summary sheet that we're looking at here?
Usually this particular sheet or set of sheets for the samples is filled out after the analysis is completed. It's used, as I said before, as something to give us a quick reference.
Okay. Does the sheet on the left-hand column, can you move that over a little bit, where it says EX and a number sign, does that have the correct numbers for the individual items?
For the extraction, yes, it does.
Okay. And have you, does this misnumbering mistake in any way undermine the results that you've described to this jury?
Conclusion.
No, it doesn't. Like I said before, this is just a sheet that we make afterwards to reference the information, to give us an easier time in looking up stuff.
And is there actually some other case that has amplification numbers 60-1 down the line?
Yes, there is.
And have you actually looked to see if there is such another case?
Yes.
And is it different than this case?
Yes.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Yamauchi. Okay, Mr. Yamauchi, you told us yesterday you went home, or you checked out shortly after 8 o'clock at night on June 14th. Do you recall about what time you got to work on the 15th?
Probably around 7 to 7:30, somewhere in there.
Okay, and when you went home that night, did you have any idea whether or not there was going to be additional work for you to do on this case on June 15th?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. When you got in, did you learn otherwise?
Yes.
Okay, what was your first contact on June 15th, the next day, with respect to this case?
I believe I talked to Mr. Matheson.
Where did you have that conversation?
That would be in serology.
Okay, do you recall if anybody else was there?
Well, eventually, Phil Van Adder.
Okay, and where did you meet Mr. Van Adder or Detective Van Adder?
As I recall, it was in serology also.
And did you have a conversation with Mr. Matheson about this case?
Yes.
Okay, what conversation did you have?
To the best of my recollection, it had to do with, yes, well, Dennis has some more samples for you, and Detective Van Adder has some exemplars.
When you say exemplars, you mean reference samples?
Yes, I do.
And did you get those reference samples from Detective Van Adder?
Yes.
Can you describe the condition they were in when he gave them to you?
Samples. In the regular coroner samples, they would be in the purple cap tubes in gray envelopes.
Okay, and did they have coroner's numbers on them?
I have to refer to my notes.
Sure. Did you write that sort of information down in your notes?
Most likely I did. We'll have to check.
Okay, would you do that?
Actually, according to my notes, I said they were in gray envelopes. According to my notes, they were in a manila envelope and contained one purple cap tube, Brown Simpson Nicole 94-05136, and that's what was on the tube.
Okay. And then that was Nicole Brown's reference sample?
Right, and then the other sample, one purple cap tube, Goldman Ronald 94-05135.
And other than receiving the tubes from Detective Van Adder, did you have any other conversation with him?
Nothing that stands out in my mind.
Okay. Did you do anything with those tubes in the analyzed evidence envelopes?
They were used to make the same exemplar swatch cards
And where did you do that?
in the serology unit.
And why did you do it in the serology unit?
Well, generally speaking, that's where I'm used to doing my work.
Is that where you were when you received them?
Yes, it was.
Okay, did you prepare those are Fitzco cards again?
Yes,
Did you prepare them in the same manner that you prepared Mr. Simpson's Fitzco card the day before?
Sustain, phrase question.
How did you prepare them in comparison with how you prepared Mr. Simpson's reference card the day before?
basically the same technique was used.
You wore gloves?
Yes,
Did you change gloves between preparation of each of the Fitzco cards?
Leading.
Sustain.
What did you do with respect to your gloves between preparing each of the Fitzco cards?
well, as I explained earlier, when you're dealing with blood tubes, it's highly likely you're going to get blood on them. So I changed my gloves between doing these blood tube exemplars.
And yesterday you described putting a Kim wipe over the top of the tube when you took the cap off. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Did you do that with both of these?
yes.
Were the gray analyzed envelopes sealed when they were given to you?
Objection leading. Approach it sidebar with the court reporter.
All right, thank you very much, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yamauchi, what sort of instrument or tool did you use to draw the blood from the tubes in preparation for the Fitzco cards?
The pipette man that I described yesterday.
Okay. And did you change the tips as you described yesterday?
Of course.
What did you do with those cards after you put the blood on them?
They were laid out to dry along the edge of the hood system I have at the edge of my workstation.
What kind of hood is that?
I'm not sure.
Did you, before, let's talk about one of these samples at a time. Did Nicole Brown's reference sample, which you've described as coroner's number 9405136, was that ultimately assigned an evidence item number?
Yes, it was.
What was that?
Item number 59.
And the same question, excuse me, with respect to Ronald Goldman's reference sample. What item was that given?
That would be item number 60.
Okay. When you first observed Nicole Brown's reference sample, which was item number 59, did you make any specific notation of how much blood was in there?
No, I would have noted whether or not it's an ample amount.
Okay. Have you ever noted how much blood, I mean recorded how much blood was in a reference sample that was provided to you when you first saw it in your career?
Something accurate? No.
And the same question with respect to Ronald Goldman's reference sample. Did you make any notation of how much blood was in that tube before you drew any to prepare the Fitzco card?
Once again, I wrote ample down, indicating to me that scientifically there's enough there for us to do our analyses.
Okay. How much blood did you withdraw from item number 59, the reference sample from Nicole Brown?
Well, I don't have it in my notes, but once again, going by what my normal procedure is, I would have probably drawn up approximately 1 ml.
Okay, and as you described yesterday with Mr. Simpson's reference sample when you prepared the Fitzco card, do you have a specific notation in there as to how much you put on the card, for the one for Nicole Brown?
No, but once again, it's approximately 200 microliters or so.
Do you recall if there was any of the blood left in the pipette tip when you disposed of it?
I don't recall. If there was, once again, my practice is not to put that back into the tube, but to dispose of the tip with the excess blood.
Right, and how much, do you have a specific recollection of how much you put on the Fitzco card for Mr. Goldman?
Once again, approximately 1 ml would be my standard practice.
And same question about the tip. Do you specifically recall whether there was anything left in that disposable tip?
No, I do not.
And did you follow your practice, and if there was, not put it back in the tube?
That's correct.
Now, just to jump ahead for a second, when these cards are dry, are they handled or stored in any different way, in any way different than the tubes are?
They have a separate pouch that's made by the manufacturer that actually stores these blood swatches. And in them they have a desiccant. That's something that allows things to stay dry, kind of like you might find in a pack of vitamins. It's very similar. And that's stuck in along with the blood swatch into this foil line envelope. And that's how that's stored.
Where does it end up?
Oh, that would be frozen.
And what about the tube? Where are the tubes, or how are the tubes stored?
Well, the tubes, after the analysis and everything, it's eventually frozen too.
Okay, and when you were finished making your preparations for the Fitzco card, what did you do with those tubes?
Finished.
You made the Fitzco cards, you have the tubes. What did you do with those tubes?
I would have been doing extracts. Is that what you mean, or?
No, where did the tubes end up
You mean after I was done with the extract and everything?
after you made the filter cards?
Well, I would have made the filter cards before I went to go sample the tubes and then put the evidence into the tubes. So there wouldn't have been tubes yet.
Okay, do you recall giving those tubes to Mr. Fung at any point?
Sustain.
Would it help to refresh your recollection to look at your notes with regard to what you did with those tubes that morning?
When you say tubes, are we talking tubes? Are we talking vials? What are we talking about?
The vials of blood, 59 and 60.
I'm sorry. Okay, I understand now. I thought you were referring again to the microcentrifuge tubes. Okay, the vials of blood were taken over to Mr. Fung.
And do you have a specific notation in your records about that?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall what time it was you gave them to Mr. Fung?
About 9:25 on the 15th of June.
And where were you when you gave those tubes or the reference vials to him?
I gave them to him in the evidence processing room.
Okay. Now, does the evidence processing room have a similar log that records when you put your badge up to the sensor?
Yes, our access cards are recorded somewhere in the lab through a computer system.
At some time soon after you gave those reference samples that were in the tubes to Mr. Fung, did you have a conversation with him about other evidence items that he had collected?
Sustain.
Did you have any conversation with Dennis Fung soon after you gave him those reference samples?
Objection leading.
Sustain.
Did you talk to Dennis Fung at any time after you gave him the reference samples?
Yes.
And when was that?
Well, sometime after that, would have discussed what the evidence items that he would have had for me to sample.
Objection moved to strike speculation.
Overruled.
And which items did you discuss with Mr. Fung?
Objection hearsay.
Sustain.
Did you process the items that you discussed with Mr. Fung?
Assumes a fact not an evidence.
Sustain.
What items did you process after your conversation with Mr. Fung?
Number 33, number 23, number 25, number 31, number 34, number 12, and number 14.
And why did you process those items?
Because it was discussed with Dennis Fung, and that was his suggestion.
Move to strike any of the hearsay that might follow from this
Overruled.
answer.
It's not hearsay. Offered for a limited purpose only to explain the conduct after that was said. Proceed.
Up to this point, what he may say next.
Proceed. Ask your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you processed 33, 23, 25, 31, 34, 12, and 14?
Yes.
And how many of those had substrate controls along with them?
.33 did not. 23 did have a control. 25 had 2 control swatches. 31 had 1 control swatch. 34 had 1 control swatch. 12 had one control swatch, and 14 had one control swatch.
Okay, Mr. Yamauchi, let's go back then and talk about how many swatches, excuse me, were within each of the stain items in those very same samples. If you made the same kind of notation and record about the sampling process as you did on the run that you did on the 14th?
Yes.
Okay, and if it would help to look at your notes to refresh your recollection, let's take them item by item, describe the number of swatches. And may I supplement that with one more thing and describe how much you removed for your own sampling?
Okay, on 33, that was something that was removed from a shoe print on a piece of carpet by Dennis Fung, and it was kind of a glump of material, and I used up that piece of sample for my analysis.
That's the one with no substrate control.
Yes.
Okay. Next sample.
And then number 23, there were two what appears to be small cloth swatches, and I used one of those for my analysis. And on number 25, there is a test tube with cloth swatches in it. And I have here written carpet fibers with two groups of material, and one of those was sampled for analysis. And then on 31, there's test tube with cloth swatches, and there was one swatch in it, and I sampled half of that for analysis. On 34, again, test tube with cloth swatches, and there was one swatch in it, and I sampled that for analysis. And on number 12, in a paper bindle, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces, and I sampled one of those pieces for analysis. And on number 14, there is one small piece of swatch or some type of transfer material, and I used that entire sample up for analysis.
Now, you've described, in describing those items, you've described some of them were in tubes
Yes,
and some of them were in paper bindles.
yes,
Okay, now, are you familiar with the drying process that Mr. Fung uses to dry wet swatches?
yes, I understand how he
And
does it.
based on your familiarity with his drying process, what's the significance of seeing those things in the tubes that morning?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well, Mr. Fung tends to dry his swatches in test tubes, and that would have been the stage at which this would have taken place.
Okay, and then what about the two that were in the bindles already, 12 and 14?
Those would,
Say tubes, I'm sorry. Did you mean? Phrase the question.
But you've described number 12, the substrate, the stain and substrate control, and 14, the stain and substrate control, as having been in bindles. What's the significance of that?
okay, then I would assume he took the tube.
Excuse me, motion to strike what he assumes. Sustain.
What's the significance of the fact that they're already in bindles?
Objection calls for speculation.
Significance doesn't. What point in the process is this?
They would have been dried and placed into the bindles.
Overruled.
Now, did you sample these stains and substrate controls in the same manner that you sampled the stains and substrate controls on June 14th?
Objection sustained.
What manner did you sample the stains and substrate controls that you've just described? 33, 23, 23 control, 25, 25 control, 31, 31 control, 34, 34 control, 12, 12 control, 14, 14 control.
I would have utilized the same handling techniques and procedures that I did on the previous day.
Same precautions,
Yes,
same reasons?
yes,
Do you ever open more than one coin envelope at a time during the sampling process on June 15th?
Objection leading.
yes.
You did open more than one coin envelope at a time?
You said never.
I said, did you ever? Let's get it.
No.
Okay. After you sampled all of these items in the manner that you sampled the items the day before, what did you do with them?
After the sampling was done, the rack of microcentrifuge tubes would have been carried back to the serology unit for further analysis.
Now, strike that, did you take any samples from 59 and 60, the two strike that, did you take any cuttings for the PCR processing for the two Fitzco cards that you've described you made earlier that morning?
Object to this form of questioning is leading. Overruled.
Yes, I did.
And when did you do that in the sequence of events?
I would have sampled those after I got back to the serology unit.
Will you describe the manner in which you sampled those two cards?
It would have been done in the same fashion as I had described for the day before for the other sample card.
Using the same safeguards?
Yes,
At some point after sampling the two Fitzco cards from 59 and 60, did you begin the PCR process?
I would have done the extraction, yes.
In the same manner you described yesterday concerning the run that you did on June 14th?
Yes.
In what order did you perform the extraction on these samples?
Again, in reference to my extraction record, I have listed item number 23, red stain, and then control. Item number 25, red stain, and then control. Item number 31, red stain, and then control. Item number 33, red stain. Item number 34, red stain. Item number 34, control. Item number 12, red stain. Item number 12, control. Item number 14, red stain. Item number 14, control. And then blood exemplar, coroner's blood exemplar, Brown Nicole, or Brown Simpson Nicole. And then again, blood exemplar from the coroner is Goldman Ronald. And then there would be that positive control standard, blood standard, followed by the negative control, cloth control.
Now, why do you have the cuttings from the Fitzco cards at the end of the line, as you did in this case?
Well, that was kind of the order that everything took place, and for some reason I tend to keep my exemplars grouped at the end.
Did you use the Kelex extraction process once again?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take? About the same length of time as it took the day before?
Yes.
Okay. And after you performed the extraction process, what did you do next with regard to these samples?
Well, after the extraction process, I would have taken the extracts over to PAB, where our other amplification lab is held at.
Perform the amplification there in the manner you performed the amplifications the day before?
Yes, I did.
Same safeguards?
Yes.
Okay, after you performed the amplification, what did you do?
After doing the amplification, then the next step would be the hybridization.
Same manner you did the day before?
Yes.
I have a standing objection. Noted.
Did you produce results from some of the samples that you processed on June 15th in the manner you've just described?
Yes.
And before we discuss the typing results on the stains, did you produce any typing results from any of the substrate controls that you processed along with the stains in this case? 23 substrate control, 25 substrate control, 31 substrate control, 34 substrate control, 12 control, and 14 control.
No.
Did any of the other negative controls that you've described yesterday produce any typing results?
The negative controls, no.
Did the positive control perform the way it should have performed in this case?
Yes, it was as expected.
Mr. Yamauchi, I'd like to talk about the results now, if we can. Your Honor, I'd like to display for the jury at this time the Bronco photo and result boards, which are respectively Peoples 172 and Peoples 260.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yamauchi, while we're getting set up with that, to move things along, can you tell the jury what typing result you produced from item number 23 from the Bronco?
1.1, 1.2.
Could you step down, and I'm going to ask you to look up on our result board for the Bronco automobile, Peoples 260 for identification. And you got a 1.1, 1.2 in your typing?
And number 23?
Number 23. Would you remove the cover under PCR results for item number 23? You see it up there? That's the result that you obtained from the Bronco, the driver's door interior.
Yes.
And from among the three reference samples that you typed, 2 on the 15th and Mr. Simpson on the 14th, whom is that result consistent with?
That Mr. Simpson.
Okay, could you remove the cover under the not excluded? Okay. Did you produce any typing results from item number 25, the driver's side carpet fiber?
Yes, I did.
What result was that?
1.1, 1.2.
Could you remove the cover over 1.1, 1.2? And is Is that also consistent with Mr. Simpson?
Yes, it is.
And both of those results are inconsistent with Mr. Goldman and Nicole Brown?
Yes, for this DQ alpha system.
Sure. Because you removed the cover from over the not excluded column? And did you produce any typing results from item 31?
'31 is inconclusive.
Okay. In what regard?
It contained what appeared to be somewhat of a
Motion to
mixture.
strike, Your Honor. Inconclusive, if he's going to go beyond the court's ruling.
Your Honor, maybe we do need to approach because
All right.
out of caution.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Harmon, 10:30.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yamauchi, you had described that, is there a difference between reporting a typable result and describing the observations that you made in the context of this PCR DQ alpha kit?
Well, the science of it all, whatever comes up on the strips is there, and scientifically everything has significance. But once again, the control dot is there for a specific reason, and that's to aid in interpretation of these dots. And so that's kind of a paradox, and I would put that on the legal end.
Okay. You described before, or a few minutes ago, that what you observed on 31 was a mixture. Is that correct?
Yes.
What did you actually see that led you to conclude on item 31, the center console stain, that it was a mixture?
Well, let me finish what I was about to
Oh, sure.
say.
No.
No?
Ask the question. Questions have to be responsive.
Sure. What did you see, and then I'll ask you to explain it. What did you see on your strip results, your typing results, that led you to conclude that it was a mixture?
Okay, it's written out 1.1, 1.2, with, weak, 1.34, and there's a side note, 1.3, very weak.
Okay. And are those results consistent with a mixture of the blood from Mr. Simpson, the defendant in this case, and Ronald Goldman?
Objection, move to strike.
Sustain. Foundation.
From among the three reference samples in this case, are those results consistent with a mixture of any of the two reference samples?
Objection again, move to strike.
Foundation.
If you look up at the board there, if one were to mix the reference sample of Mr. Simpson with the reference sample of Mr. Goldman, what sort of mixture would you produce?
Again, moving back into that C dot, and the reason why this was made inconclusive is because we saw some dots that were below the level
Strike
of that
that
C
response.
dot.
All right, juries, to disregard the last answer, Mr. Yamauchi, please answer specifically the question that is posed to you by the attorney. Question was, what do you get if you mixed Ronald Goldman's reference sample with Mr. Simpson's sample? What result would you get?
Well, Your Honor, part of this has to do with the levels that the bloods would be mixed at, like if one's in
All
a
right.
higher concentration or
Juries to disregard that as well. Ask a different question, Mr. Harmon.
If you were to mix whole blood reference samples from Mr. Goldman and Mr. Simpson, what mixture results would show up on a DQ alpha strip?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
Okay, if you were to mix those two blood samples, I would expect to see the represented alleles from both parties.
And what would they be?
Well, Mr. Simpson is 1.1, 1.2, and Mr. Goldman is, sorry, just to look this up to be sure, a 1.3, 1.4.
Now,
All right, let's move on.
did you say 1.34 or 1.3?
I'm sorry, 1.3, 1.34.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Yamauchi. Item number 33, which is on the carpet from the Bronco. Were you able to produce any typable results from that stain?
No results.
Item number 34, on the driver's side, the wall on the outside of the inside of the car, but towards the left side.
Item number 34 is a 1.1, 1.2.
If you would, Mr. Yamauchi, please cover to just above or below the DOJ results on item 34. Right here. And it would appear your lab got the same, or you got the same results that DOJ did?
Yes.
Item 12. Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to put up Exhibit 120 and the photo board for Rockingham, or the result board for Rockingham, Exhibit 261.
All right.
Correction, the interior photo board is the one we were looking for. That's Exhibit 169.
All right.
Mr. Yamauchi, let's talk about the typing results that you obtained from item 12, which was from inside Mr. Simpson's house on the wooden floor. What DQ alpha result did you get?
On number 12, 1.1, 1.2.
That's consistent with Mr. Simpson.
Yes, it is, for the DQ alpha system.
And item 14 here from the master bathroom floor, what result did you get there?
Also 1.1, 1.2.
Okay. And lastly, in this series of tests, we mentioned yesterday what type you produced when you typed Mr. Goldman's reference sample from that Fitzco card. Did you detect something in Mr. Goldman's blood about that was somewhat inconsistent with the ultimate typing result? Would it help to look at your notes on that?
Observation straight from the strip, 1.34, and I also note a very faint 1.1.
And is that, this very faint 1.1, is that something you're familiar with that's described in the user guide and scientific literature with respect to the DQ alpha system?
Objection leading.
Sustain, rephrase the question.
Have you read about a typing result of the type that you saw in Mr. Goldman's reference sample in either the user guide or any of the scientific literature?
Objection still leading.
Overruled.
Well, the user guide refers to what's known as cross-hybridization, which in the one allele, and I don't want to get too complex, but basically what happens is on these particular one dots, quite often they're so similar that when you have enough DNA there, they will somewhat, to a certain extent, cross and hybridize with the wrong point. But it only leaves a very, very faint dot that's much less than the C dot. And that's another function of the C dot, to give us information like that.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term DX activity?
Yes,
What is-
yes I am.
Does that have any relationship to what you observed in Mr. Goldman's reference sample?
Objection leading.
Sustain.
What, if anything, does DX activity have to do with what you observed in Mr. Goldman's reference sample?
DX is also another phenomenon, and what that is the DQ alpha is called a locus. And what DX is it's another locus from another gene that's very similar to DQ alpha. And some people, but not all, may have this. And if they do, occasionally it can show up, and it does hybridize to that 1.1 dot to a very slight extent also. Again, showing the significance of the C dot so that we can interpret our strips. Because if these things show up, they're generally very, very low in activity, and they would be well beneath the level of the C dot.
Okay, I forgot to have you remove the covers from item 14 from the master bathroom floor. Would you remove the cover for the PCR results? 1, 1, 1, 2, and also the not excluded column? Okay, you can have a seat again, Mr. Yamauchi. Mr. Yamauchi, did you calculate a frequency for the occurrence of the 1.1, 1.2 DQ alpha allele?
Yes, approximate general population frequency.
Okay, when you say approximate general population frequency, what's that information based from or derived from?
It's derived from known studies from the FBI, some from people at Roche and other reputable statistics, and that's approximated and weighted along with the general population for the county and specifically the city of Los Angeles.
And what approximate percentage of the overall population has that 1.1, 1.2 allele?
Approximately 1 in 15
Okay.
people.
Could we, do you have a marker up there? We've got some, I'll come up here, I'd like to mark that frequency on the Rockingham results board. Right behind the board there, can you get there?
Mr. Harmon, I'm a little leery of those dry erase markers, the
Oh, what,
permanence of them.
yeah, why don't you write it up in the frequency column?
For this one right here, right?
Okay, and would you, just to complete the balance here, would you put this LAPD item number 12 result up on item number 12 on the Rockingham result board? And that's a result that's consistent with what's reported up there from cell mark, the 1.1, 1.2 for the DQ alpha marker.
Yes, it is.
Okay, you can have a seat now, Mr. Yamauchi. One last topic here before the break. Mr. Yamauchi, when did you perform the product gels in this case with respect to when you did the hybridization that produced the typing strips?
The product gel was performed afterwards.
When you say afterwards, could you give us the dates when you ran the product gels for both of the PCR DQ alpha runs that you've just described to the jury?
Okay, referring to my notes. The 61 series is dated 6/16/94.
Now, the 61 series was the run that was made on which date?
The amplification was done on the 14th.
Okay, and then with regard to the amplification that was done on the 15th, when did you do the product gel in that?
That's dated the 17th.
Okay. Thank you. This be a good time?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take our recess for the morning. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, have any contact with anybody with regard to the case, or conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you, and we'll be in recess for 15. All right? Please.
One housekeeping, I did not write the frequencies on the Bronco board. With the court's permission, if we can do that out of the presence of the jury, they're the same results.
Is that 1 in 15?
Yes, Your Honor, if
Mr.
that's
Scheck,
okay.
any objection?
No, as a matter of fact, as Mr. Harmon will tell you, I asked him to do it.
All right. All right, at some time later today, then we'll clean that up. All right, let's have the jurors, please. Records to reflect, we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Yamauchi, would you resume the witness stand, please? And Mr. Harmon, about how much do you have left?
35 minutes, Your Honor.
All right, proceed.
Mr. Yamauchi, I just want to make a point clear. When you took a sampling from all of the evidence items that you've described as having sampled for your PCR DQ alpha test in this case, did you consume all of whatever you sampled in the testing process?
Not on every item. Most of the items I just used portions of.
Okay, my question was vague then. The portions that you took for your samplings, were those consumed in the testing process by you?
Yes, they were.
Okay, and whatever as you've described them, once you took them and processed them in the way that you've described to this jury, none of those samplings or the cuttings that you made remained?
Sustained. Phrase the question.
Once you remove those items from the bindles and consume them in testing, did those samples cease to exist?
No, they don't cease to exist. They're in the extracts.
Okay, but did those extracts ever get sent out to any other laboratory?
No, they did not.
Did you prepare what's known as a Los Angeles Police Department analyzed evidence report describing the samples that you tested in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have that in front of you, Mr. Fung, or Mr. Yamauchi?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what date did you file that report on?
The analyzed evidence report, what's the date on it?
Okay, the date I started was the 14th, and the date that I finished was the 17th.
And what's the purpose of that report?
To reflect the results of my testing and impart conclusions and so on and so forth.
Okay, and have you detected any errors that you made in the compilation of that report?
Well, specifics in my notes say that number 49 is 6 pieces when I first received it.
Okay, and then in your report, how did you describe it?
It's listed as 5.
And do you remember what condition those swatches were in when you first observed them?
Yes, well, yes, I do, that particular one.
Oh, could you describe that, please?
There was 2 swatches stuck together and a number of other loose swatches.
Okay, did you actually receive all the items that you've listed on your analyzed evidence report on the same date?
Objection,
No, I did not.
And does the report suggest that you did?
No, it collectively includes the time frame from when I started to when I finished.
And you've already described to the jury when you received those items?
Yes, and it's in my notes.
Okay. Mr. Yamauchi, did you obtain the reference samples from Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman and the defendant on June 25th for some testing purpose? Would it help to refresh your recollection to look at your notes for June 25th?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Proceed.
And what was the purpose that you took possession of the 3 items? The defendant's reference tube, the reference tube from Nicole Brown, and the reference tube from Ronald Goldman?
To do conventional analysis on the reference samples.
And do you actually have detailed notes of what you did with those samples on that date?
Yes, I do.
Okay, let's start out with the sample from Nicole Brown. What was the purpose that you took that tube that day?
That day, it was taken out of property or ECU to do conventional analysis, as I previously stated.
Were those items all sealed?
Yes, they were.
In preparation for the testing that was about to be performed, what actions did you take with regard to Nicole Brown's reference sample?
Well, some blood was removed from that tube to do a ABO analysis.
How much did you remove from Nicole Brown's reference tube?
In my notes, I have listed approximately 3/4 of a ml or milliliter.
And when you say approximately, can you give us a range on how much you withdrew?
Well, I guess it would be between a half of an ml and an ml.
Okay. And use the same pipette man?
Yes, I do.
And when you withdraw it from the tube, what are you actually doing with it once it's in the pipette man?
It's being transferred into another one of those microcentrifuge tubes.
And how much can they hold in terms of liquid volume?
They can hold up to about 1.5 mLs.
Okay. Do you recall whether you filled this one up all the way?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you recall whether there was any left in the pipette man, the disposable tip?
I'm not certain, but if there was, once again, I would throw away that along with the tip.
Did you make any specific?
That's what he would have done.
How much did you take from Mr. Goldman's reference tube?
Approximately a half an ml.
Why did you take less from Mr. Goldman's reference tube than Nicole Brown's reference tube?
Well, the way the pipette man works is you press it, and I usually have it set on 1 ml. That's the full volume that it can take up. And when you stick it into the blood vial, you allow your thumb to go up to pull in whatever you consider a sufficient amount, or what I considered a sufficient amount. And once I got to there, I stopped, put the tube in the rack, and then opened up my microcentrifuge tube and deposited it. So I don't always suck up the full volume that I potentially can in my pipette man.
And is there any reason to be precise in withdrawing blood from any of these tubes in terms of the scientific tests that are about to be performed?
Well, you need enough to do the ABO testing, and what I've listed there is sufficient.
How much do you need?
Approximately a half an ml or so to get a good separation of the blood.
Okay, and how much blood do you recall withdrawing from the defendant's reference tube?
I wrote 3/4 of an ml, so approximately that.
I'm sorry, are you finished? Let the record reflect the witness just was looking at his piece of paper.
And how accurate is the 3/4 of an ml?
Once again, it's just an approximation.
Okay. Do you recall whether you filled up the microcentrifuge tube that you put Mr. Simpson's blood into all the way?
No, I don't.
Make any notation of how much you put in there?
No.
Okay. Let's shift, if you will, to July 20th, 1994. I want to ask you some questions about item number 78, Ronald Goldman's shoes.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do some processing of Mr. Goldman's shoes on July 20th, 1994?
Yes, I did an initial search to see what types of evidence would be on that item.
Yeah. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And ultimately, did you swatch either of the shoes, Mr. Goldman's shoes, and attempt to remove some apparent evidentiary items?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe which shoe
Excuse me.
you swatched?
Mr. Scheck, you're standing between the witness and the jury. Right.
Can you describe which shoe that you swatched and what you did?
Okay, it was the left shoe, and what I did was I did that preliminary screening test that I described earlier, the phenolphthalein test, and it came up positive in this particular area, and there was a notable stain there, and that was transferred to a cotton cloth swatch.
Okay. How many swatches?
There are 2 in all.
Okay. Can you describe their relative or respective sizes?
One's approximately 4 times the size of the other.
Okay. And did those swatches receive item numbers assigned to them at some point?
Well, one of them was booked as item number 174. That would be the smaller one. The other one was sent off to Cellmark.
Okay. Was there a substrate control that you removed from 78, the bottom of that left shoe?
On that shoe, I could not find an area near that stain, particular stain, that was that would indicate there wasn't any blood there. In other words, that phenolphthalein test that I was telling you about came up positive in all the areas I checked near that stain. So I decided not to collect a control.
Does that happen occasionally?
Yes, it does.
On a shift to July 27th, did you examine item number 97, the underwear that Nicole Brown was wearing?
Number 87?
I believe it's 87. Did you examine
Did you
87?
say 97 or 87?
I said 87.
I heard 97. Have we figured 87 or 97?
80, I said 87.
All right, 87.
You find your notes?
Yes.
87?
Yes.
Okay. July 27th?
Yes.
Okay. Will you describe what you were looking for and what sorts of tests you performed in that regard?
I did an acid phosphatase test, and what that is a preliminary screening test for the presence of semen.
And will you describe how you actually performed that test on an item such as the panties that were item number 87?
Well, we do what's called an AP map, and what that involves is you take a piece of filter paper and you'd moisten that and allow the stain or the target area on the panties or whatever item you're looking at to transfer some of its components into the wet filter paper. Once that transfer is done, you take the filter paper aside and then you add the proper chemicals for this test. A purple color after approximately 30 seconds is indicative of the presence of semen.
And what results did you obtain when you processed item 87, Nicole Brown's underwear?
There were all the AP tests were negative and semen was not detected.
And how many areas did you try to sample?
There are basically 3 areas.
Okay. Let's shift to August 4th, 1994, if you will. Did you examine item 13, a pair of socks that were found in Mr. Simpson's residence in the master bedroom?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have the plastic bag containing the socks marked as People's 284 for identification?
All right, People's 284.
Mr. Yamauchi, I'm going to ask you to open these. We'll get you some gloves. And do you want to put some paper out there? You tell me.
Please.
Okay. Do you need some paper?
Do we have some paper?
I think Mrs. Robertson is getting some.
These are pads here, Ron.
Thanks.
I want you to use one of the paper pad items.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you please open People's Exhibit 284, which contains item 13, the socks?
Okay. There's a plastic bag containing a white envelope. I'm cutting into the plastic bag. I'm removing the white envelope.
Ms. Yamaguchi, before you open it, let me just ask you a couple of general questions. You've described the test you performed on the panties. Did you, during the course of time from June 13th or June 14th to August 4th, were there also numerous other items, you described Ronald Goldman's shoes, that you examined during that time sequence?
Yes.
How was it a decision made about what to examine and when to examine it?
All the work that I did was through my supervisor, Greg Matheson.
And how were those assignments communicated to you?
Via Mr. Matheson.
Okay, for example, were they communicated to you separately or all at once?
All at different points in times.
Okay. Okay, why don't you go ahead and open up the paper envelope which contains item 13, the socks. Should we mark that separately, Your Honor?
No, envelope and contents is fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm now cutting into the white envelope. I'm removing a brown paper bag.
Do you need some more room? Do you want us to move those?
Mr. Yamaguchi, why don't you put your notebook up on the ledge here?
All right.
And let's move that paper over because there's a false in there.
The latest seal on the envelope is a red seal. Appears to be Greg Matheson's initials or signature, and a serial number B8927 under division SID. Date appears to be 4/21/95. I'm breaking that seal, red seal, that I just described. Inside the brown paper bag is a white envelope. I've opened the white envelope. Removing a pair of black socks. Dark navy blue, black.
Is it hard to tell whether they're navy blue or black?
Overruled.
Well, for me it is.
Okay. Mr. Yamauchi, I'll ask you about your exam in a second. What were you asked to do with regard to item 13, the two navy blue or black socks that you've just opened up in court?
Objection as to time.
Sustain. Rephrase the question. It's vague.
When did you receive the assignment from Mr. Matheson to look at these socks?
I don't have that information with me.
Okay.
It would have to be prior to the date that I analyzed it, along with some other items.
Okay. What other items were you asked to look at?
You know, at this time, I don't have independent recollection of the grouping of items that were asked of me to be analyzed. Mr. Matheson might have notes as to what date he asked me and when he actually assigned myself and Sue Johnson or Sue Brockbank this task of looking through the items.
Okay, well, what other items did you look at? You've talked about 87 and 78. 87 is Nicole Brown's panties, 78 are Ronald Goldman's shoes. What other items had you already looked at before you looked at the socks on August 4th?
Objection as to time.
Well, there was a dress, a shirt, pants, socks. There are numerous items.
Okay. And were those all items that you looked at over a period of time before you looked at the socks?
Objection vague as to time.
Overruled.
Yes.
And when Mr. Matheson gave you this assignment, did he tell you which order to look at these items in?
No, he didn't.
That was left up to you?
When we had time with our other casework and stuff.
Okay. Now, looking at a dark navy blue or black item like that, have you tried to look at an item like that that's so dark to detect the presence of blood in the past?
Yes, I have.
And what are the general steps that you use when you're trying to look to detect the possibility of blood on an item of that sort?
Well, first and foremost, when examining evidence, you want to take a good visual look at it. And that just simply means taking it, holding it up under a good light, observing all sides and angles of it, and trying to see if there are any types of discolorations or anything that could possibly be a stain. And that would be the first step.
And is that the step you took with respect to the socks in this case, item 13?
Yes.
Okay, and when you did hold them up in the way you just described, did you notice anything?
There are a couple areas.
If I'm thinking about that, how am I going to listen to the testimony? Chrissy?
Okay, and can you tell one of those socks from the other by any sort of lettering or numbering as you sit there today?
There what appears to be different individuals' markings on the socks.
And those markings were not on there when you examined them on August 4th?
No.
Okay. Would you hold up, just pick either of those socks if you would, and just show the jury how you examine them visually?
Well, I can't pick up and show them. What I did was I laid them out flat, and I carefully looked them over. I could hold it up to you, to the jury like this.
Move this down in front of the jury. We'll put the pad of paper up on top of the cart.
I'm just wondering the quality of the view for everybody. All right, let's move it down there and let's make sure everybody gets a close look. All right, Mr. Yamauchi, would you, actually, Mr. Harmon, would you come and grab the packaging materials first?
Yes, it is.
All right, and Mr. Yamauchi, would you transfer the socks on the paper, please? All right, Mr. Yamauchi, why don't you remove the envelope from underneath the socks there, so it lies flat. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yamauchi, would you just pick up whichever of those socks you feel and show the jury how you examined them?
Your Honor, this is all on August 4th, is that...
On August the 4th.
I laid them out flat, just like this, and I tried to take a good, careful look at it and note any discolorations for a phenolphthalein test. And again, that's that preliminary blood screening test I talked about earlier.
Initially, when you laid them out, did you notice any discolored areas?
On one of the socks, there was something towards the toe area that seemed like a discoloration. And on the other sock, I noticed something in the ankle area.
What did it look like?
It just looked like some light discoloration or difference in color between the rest of the sock.
At that point, did it look reddish in any way?
I really wouldn't say reddish. It just seemed like a very subtle discoloration.
And are those the only two areas on either of those socks that you noticed when you looked at them visually the first time?
Well, to tell you the truth, what I did was I noticed those areas, and then I did the phenolphthalein test. They came up positive. I asked my supervisor, I told him I got 2 positive spots on them. Should I do anything else with it? And he said, no, that's it. Close it up, and we'll decide what to do with it. I guess talk about it administrative levels and stuff.
Now, were those 2 positive phenolphthalein results on the same sock or different socks?
One was on one sock and one was on the other.
Did you mark the socks in any way?
I may have initialed it, but on something like this, well, actually, I initialed the socks on the inside up here. But I didn't mark the areas that I phenolphthalein tested.
Okay, you said up here somewhere. Could you point to it so we can describe for the record what you pointed to?
My initial CY.
Excuse me, counsel, could we get you all to move back a little bit? Thank you.
Right here, my initials CY.
And is there a tag in that sock that has the CY and you just showed the jury?
No, it's in a white pen.
Okay.
It's not real visible.
Did you mark the other, and may the record reflect that's inside the top of the sock, Your Honor?
Your Honor, may I request that we just designate the socks, they have other markings on them. whether
Yes,
we
can we
do
tell which one of the two
A and
socks?
B or whatever, there are other,
The sock that you just referred to with the CY inside the top, does that have a, what is that down there towards the heel? There's some lettering down there?
There's a B, and then something that's I can't interpret.
Okay, let's look to the, did you mark the other sock as well?
Well, I'm not exactly sure that those are my initials. One of the problems with this is when you've got a dark surface, we have this white pen that we write with, and it's often very difficult to get legible in certain instances. And to explain the CY here, usually I put my serial number after that, but in this case I just marked CY and tried to not to put as much markings or anything on those socks as possible, because I would want to leave all the areas available for further analysis.
excuse me, Your Honor, in terms of what he's just been pointing to in markings, I think that what he pointed to is a B is number 13, not a B. And he was then pointing to initials on both different socks. And what I would request is that we designate one sock A, one sock B, and then for the record, note what he just did. Otherwise, we won't be able to reconstruct this.
Mr. Harmon? Your record.
One sock has CY in it, the other one has something unintelligible in it.
All right, proceed.
Did you identify the two areas that you conducted the phenolphthalein tests in any way?
Well, in my notes, I have approximations on one to help my recollection later on, so I knew it was from the ankle. And on the other one, I noted somewhere in the toe area.
In the sock? I'm sorry.
But I don't believe I marked the sock up. And I don't see anything on the sock in those particular areas.
Now, what I'd like you to do, Mr. Yamauchi, is look very carefully and perhaps hold up the sock that you have your clear initials in, and look at all those little holes in there, if you would. Both sides.
Any juror who needs to stand up, feel free to do so if you want to get a better look.
Were those holes in the socks when you examined them on August 4th?
No, they were not.
And when you conducted your examination on August 4th, did you notice any discoloration in any of those areas that have been cut out from that sock?
Well, like I indicated before, I marked that in an ankle area of one and on a toe area of another, there were discolorations.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, when we're concluded with this, what I'll have the witness do is move to each part of the jury box and display the sock for you.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness indicate which of these two socks he just testified about.
I think Mr. Harmon characterized it in his question. Counsel, would you step back, please? Thank you.
But if he was pointing at socks, I mean, records...
Counsel, if you listen to the question, it was directed to the one with his initials in it. Proceed.
Now, the sock with CY up inside, the one that has it clearly in there, how many cutout areas do you see in that sock?
I count 8.
Did you notice any signs of discoloration in any of those areas on the sock when you examined it on August 4th?
Well, there's one down towards the toe area where there's a slight discoloration of this particular sock.
And does that appear to be the sock that you conducted the phenolphthalein testing on in the toe area?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Yes, I think that's consistent with my notes. It would be some discoloration down towards the toe area.
And the other 7 areas where there are now holes in them, did you notice any discoloration in those areas? I'm talking about on August 4th.
No.
Okay, let's move on to the other sock, if you will, the one that does not have the clear GY inside.
CY.
CY. How many, were those cut areas in that sock on August 4th when you examined it?
No, they were not.
How many cut areas are there now?
I count 5.
Okay, did you notice any discoloration in any of the areas where the cuttings, or where there are cutout areas on the sock that we're focusing on when you examined it on August 4th?
I see a discoloration in the ankle area, and there's a cutting on the edge of that, and some initials.
Whose initials do you see there?
It appears to be D something D, DWD or DLD. I'm not sure.
Does that appear to be, or does that sock appear to be the sock where you did the positive phenolphthalein in the ankle area?
Well, that discoloration is consistent with my notes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Finish my question.
Are you done with the questions with that? With the sock?
With this item, yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Yamauchi, with Mr. Harmon's assistance, would you move the cart down to the end of the jury box there? All right, and if you would, just pick up each one of the socks and display it to the jury each side. All right, if the jurors in the back row, hold on just a second.
When he holds them up, that he indicates which of the designations he's holding up.
Yes. Mr. Yamauchi, which one are you, would you tell us which one you're holding up each time you pick it up? Mr. Yamauchi, would you tell us which sock you're handling, please?
This is the one with the initials that aren't very readable or aren't readable. And this is the one that I'm holding up at this time. And previous to that, I held up the other sock.
All right. All right, let's move down to
With the
the
initials, yes. I'm sorry.
near end of the jury box here. Mr. Harmon,
I'm sorry.
why don't you assist Mr. Yamauchi bring the card down to the bottom end here. No, go ahead and show this end of the jury box, please.
All right. Okay, this has my initials in it. It's one side. It's the other. And this is the one with the initials that are not clear. That's one side. And that's the other.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think maybe we should put these away now. Can we do that?
Well, Mr. Scheck, do you anticipate cross-examining on that? Well, we won't get to that. Okay, go ahead and package it back up.
Okay.
You're on the wrong still, from the
Counsel, Mr. Harmon, let's wind it up.
Mr. Yamauchi, I'm going to try to direct you to certain other items that you processed in this case. On August 16th, did you take some cuttings from 79, 81, and 86? Those are respectively Ronald Goldman's jeans, Ronald Goldman's shirt, and Nicole Brown's dress.
Yes.
Okay, and what was the purpose of taking those cuttings?
They were needed as cloth exemplars. In other words, as we use exemplars for bloods for individuals, clothing articles for the same purpose need exemplars for the trace analysis, and that's something that'll be talked about later, I believe.
And what did you do with regard to those items?
They were sent to the FBI.
On what date?
Oops. On the 16th,
Of which month?
August 16th, 1994.
Want to change now to July 29th, 1994. Did you come into possession of LAPD items 115, 116, and 117?
Yes.
Okay, and will you describe what you did with those items?
They were taken out of the bindle and observed. In other words, I just took my usual description notes where I draw somewhat of a little sketch of the swatches.
And then later on September 26, 1994, were those processed and are actually processed for shipping somewhere?
Yes, they were sent out on the 26th
Sent to where?
to the Department of Justice.
Okay, and let me ask you about LAPD items 303, 304, and 305. Did you come into possession of those items on September 6, 1994?
Item number 305. 303 and 304 I don't have listed for this particular date.
Okay, maybe we need to look at, with the court's permission, Exhibit 177E. Mr. Yamauchi, why don't you step down and look at 177E, if you will, and while it's up there, start out with 115, 116, and 117. Do you recognize 115, 116, 117 as the items that were sent to DOJ on September 26, 1994?
Yes.
Okay, and how about 303, 304, and 305?
Anything about 303 and 304 at this point?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I can't hear you.
Thank you.
Oh, well,
You said, should I tell her for the record? She said she couldn't hear me.
she heard.
I objected to 303 and 304 at this point.
Proceed.
Do you recognize those items?
Yes.
And were 303 and 304 sent to DOJ on the date that's on the board, 9/26?
Let me check my records.
Sure.
Yes, they were.
And 305, when was that sent to DOJ? Is the board correct when it says 9/7/94?
Yes, the board's correct.
Okay. May I have marked as people's next in order, Exhibit 285, an additional SOC examination board? Take down.
All right, People's 285.
Mr. Yamuchi, while Mr. Fairtlow is getting that board up, were you present in the Los Angeles Police Department SID on February 16th, 1995, when Dr. Henry Lee conducted an examination on the socks that you've just shown to the jury that are marked as Exhibit 284 for identification?
Yes.
And what room was that examination conducted in?
It was in our conference room.
Okay, how many people were in that room, do you recall?
There were quite a few, about 9.
Okay. And where did you sit with respect to where the Dr. Lee conducted his examination?
Across the table.
Did you observe closely Dr. Lee's examination of those gloves?
Excuse me, examination of the gloves?
I'm sorry, the socks. You know Dr. Lee?
I know of his reputation, and I met him then.
And who was he working for when he conducted this examination?
I understand he's retained by the defense in this case.
Move to strike the word retain.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Was he the defense consultant in this case?
Yes.
How long did Dr. Lee perform his examination of those socks?
Well, it was over an hour.
Okay, well, would you step up to the board and use the pointer, if you will, and I'd like you to describe what's depicted in the photographs, starting, the board is entitled Henry Lee's Sock Examination. Would you point to the photo that says puts arm, parentheses, no lab coat, into bag to elbow? Did you see Dr. Lee do that?
Yes.
Okay, and what is he actually doing in that photograph?
He's reaching in to grab the sock,
And what kind of bag was it in?
or I don't know. That was a brown paper bag, I'm sorry. He was reaching in there, I don't know for what reason.
Where were the socks at the point that you see him reaching into that paper bag?
The socks were in an envelope, a white envelope.
And was that envelope in the bag at the time he's reaching into the bag that's shown in the photograph?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Now, the next photo shows Dr. Lee standing up, and the description under it is no lab coat or hairnet. Did Dr. Lee wear a lab coat at all during this?
No, he didn't.
Did he wear a hairnet?
No, he didn't.
Could you describe what's on the table in front of Dr. Lee, the equipment and the other items that are there in front of him?
Well, there's a microscope and paper for examining stuff on.
What kind of
Examination paper.
I'm sorry, what kind of microscope is that?
Well, it's a general stereoscope that used low magnification to look over and observe pieces of evidence.
Okay, let's just jump to the end of this for a second. It appears that in the photo on the left there where Dr. Lee's reaching in the bag, he's got gloves on, is that correct?
Yes, he does.
Did Dr. Lee ever change gloves during this entire 1-hour examination of both of those socks?
I didn't see him change his gloves.
Does that mean that he did not change his gloves?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, he didn't.
Okay. Are the socks shown in the photo where Dr. Lee is standing up, the two black items down in the lower left-hand corner?
Yes, that's the socks.
Okay, if you would, just try not to block the juror's view. The photo at the top right there, what is Dr. Lee doing in that photograph?
He has a scale in his hand. It looks like he's measuring something.
And when you say he's got a scale in his hand, is that a ruler?
Yeah, it's similar to a small ruler.
And what is he doing with that scale or ruler?
He's measuring something.
And is what he's measuring, is he touching the item with the ruler?
Well, it's hard to tell from this photo, but I've seen him when he was doing that, touch the ruler to the item, yes.
Okay, did you ever see him flame that ruler when he changed to the other sock?
No, that's ridiculous.
Did you ever see him bleach that ruler?
Motion to strike. The term ridiculous.
Did you ever see him bleach that ruler?
No,
Did you ever see him stratolink that ruler?
no.
You know what a stratolink is?
It's a UV decontamination process.
And what effect would that have on biological material?
Render, degrade DNA, break it down.
Okay. In the lower left-hand photo, there's actually a photo showing a ruler sitting on top of one of the socks. Did you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next photo in the middle shows Dr. Lee examining the other sock. Do you remember him examining both socks?
Yes.
Okay. And then the final photo shows Dr. Lee turning the socks inside out.
Yes.
You remember seeing him do that?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Yamaguchi. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Do you need a, all right. I'm sorry, I got to,
Show the jury the board a little bit better.
yes. I got a conflicting answer. Do you need a break now, or do you want to proceed?
I'd have to show them boards.
Okay,
Can't start.
okay. Well, I got a nod and then a shake. All right, thank you, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Fairtlow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session at this time. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Do not form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you. Do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Stand in recess until 1:30. All right, Mr. Yamauchi, you may step down. 1:30.